Alrighty. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cameron. I'm going to be doing the vehicle buying kind of seminar thing for Mayo Employees Federal Credit Union. A little background on myself, kind of why am I qualified to be here, essentially. I am a loan officer here at Mayo, and before that, I spent almost a decade in the auto business, working as both salesperson all the way up to finance manager for 6 years-ish. So I've bought and sold a bunch of cars, not necessarily all for myself. So yeah, I've been through this a couple thousand times, and hopefully some of the information that I have today will help you and just make a genuinely daunting process a little bit easier for you. So first things first, whenever someone comes in and just has general questions about the vehicle buying process, just ask where they're at. Have they found a vehicle? Where are they at? And those steps are kind of here. First things first is before you even look at, hey, how much do I need to borrow, stuff like that, you got to know what you want. I've had people that when I worked in the dealers, they came in for a truck and left in a Mustang. So I mean, it's just depending on kind of what your needs are. So narrow your search down, research your top choices, make sure you're looking for a vehicle, whether that's an SUV, a van, a truck, a car, whatever, motorcycle, ATV, and just make sure that you know exactly what you're looking for. Once you do that, secure your financing, and this is kind of where we come in. There's multiple different options. Dealers will often give you options for financing. We're here as well. Right now we are running a loan promotion for existing members, which is nice. But yeah, just you can apply online, you can apply in person, come in, talk with a loan officer, and just kind of see what your options are for that sense. And then obviously once you have your financing taken care of, figure out exactly what you want to buy, right? Pick out the exact model, go to dealerships, look at them, search private party websites, find a vehicle you like, go sit, drive in it, touch, feel it. Make sure it's the vehicle for you. And then from there, we'll get a vehicle value on it, make sure it's worth what you're paying for it, and then actually make that purchase. Alrighty. But just to kind of right? How do you do that? How do you start this process? I always tell people, base your decisions on fact rather than emotion. Now, this is a prime example of do as I say, not as I do. I'm really bad at this. I've bought many cars on pure emotion, and I don't regret any of them, but for the functionality side of things, you got to be looking at the facts. And so if you have a family of 5, you're probably not going to be looking at a 2-door sports car, right? Just make sure that you're looking at a vehicle that fits your needs, right? If you need space, SUVs are your jam. If you're looking to haul people around, look at vans. If you're looking to haul stuff around, look at trucks, right? Make sure you kind of sit down and ask yourself, what do I really want out of a vehicle? What do I want it to do for me? And then once you get that, obviously, you can let emotion decide a little bit, but just make sure that you're getting exactly what you're looking for. From there, just kind of what types of vehicles are out there available for purchase, right? There's 2 that I have up here, but I'm going to throw in a third. The first one is obviously new cars. Thankfully, the market has kind of settled down a little bit over the past couple months. It's still kind of crazy in the sense that there might be a vehicle that you may need to order, or you're going to be waiting a couple months for if you order it directly from the factory. But these are new cars. Nice thing is they come with a factory warranty. You don't need to worry about the vehicle's history because, well, there's probably only 5-10 miles on it when you pick it up. And then obviously you're going to get the best interest rates for these vehicles. And the reason why is because they're the lowest risk loan that we can possibly have. Just because the number one reason people miss payments is because they're fixing their cars. So the second one is used vehicles. And this is exactly what they are. Obviously, those are often quite a bit less expensive. And thankfully, the used market has kind of settled down as the new car market has become a little bit more widely available. But used cars, again, there's that less kind of drive-off depreciation, but there is that downside of not maybe knowing the vehicle's history, right? And this is where kind of trusting your seller comes in, right? You need to make sure that if you're buying it private party, do they have receipts for the things that they've done? Has it been recorded? And essentially just make sure that you're doing your research on a used vehicle. Now, I'm going to throw in a middle one in here, and that's going to be a certified used vehicle. A lot of dealerships offer these. So for example, I'm going to use Ford for a lot of this. just because, well, I used to work for them, and that's kind of primarily my experience. But let's say you go to a Ford dealership and you are talking to a salesperson and they say, hey, we have this certified Ford over here. What that means is that vehicle's been inspected up to Ford's, not the dealer's, Ford the manufacturer's specification, which means that typically it comes with additional manufacturer warranty on it. They're probably going to be a little bit more expensive because of that, but odds are you're going to be getting a better car than a standard used vehicle. So those are the three types of vehicles that you can have: new, certified, used, and used. And then once you get that, narrow your search down. Now you've already chosen a vehicle based off of what you need it to do. The next part is making sure that it fits your budget, right? You can't go borrowing $60,000 on a vehicle and expect to be paying $250 a month. That's not how math works. So you got to set realistic goals for yourself. And don't max yourself out on this either. If you're like, you know what, my max payment is going to be $500, 525 is not 500, right? Go on the lower end, go 475, stuff like that, just to make sure that it's affordable for you. The nice thing is we do have a loan calculator online. So if you go to our website, mailcreditunion.org, and just go over to the loans and mortgages, hit auto loans. On the left side, you're going to see a little spot for payment calculator. From there, you can type in how much you want to finance, your term length that you want to do, rough interest rates, which again, also on our website. And you can kind of figure out what payment suits your budget. And then again, you can always call in and we can always help out with that as well. Now, obviously, once you've researched the type of vehicle, you actually want to take a look at, okay, this is the vehicle that I want to purchase. How do I know it's a good car, right? And just kind of do some homework on it, right? And these are 3 good resources that you can use just for vehicle reviews and stuff like that. So Auto Trader, TrueCar, Consumer Reports has a lot of good stuff, but a lot of the times too, just go in and ask people, right? I'm sure everyone has an opinion on a vehicle of what they consider is best, and take that into account. You'll notice a trend once you ask enough people. That being said, how do you buy your car, right? There's a lot of different spots that you can purchase vehicles. Obviously, dealers are the most common. They specialize in selling cars. That's what they do. But you can also hit up things like Craigslist.org, Cars Direct, and then the nice thing for mail, if you are a mail employee, obviously you have the mail classifieds that you can use as well. But again, the big thing is just make sure that you're vetting your seller on private party purchases. Make sure it's not, hey, we only accept cash and stuff like that, because odds are, if they only accept cash, probably something's a little sketchy. So you have it there. And again, obviously a nice Google search will get you some good options as well. That being said, how to secure your financing. There are some advantages in setting up your financing before you actually visit dealers, and I'm going to use dealers in this sense because they're the only ones that kind of can really say, hey, this is what we have. Now, I am a fan of going with the lowest number. So the lowest number always wins. If we are not the lowest number, we're not the lowest number. But we do provide you the best service that we possibly can. A lot of the times, the only way that our rates get beaten is usually if the manufacturer is running promotional financing. So you'll see a lot of like, hey, Ford is offering 0% financing on new vehicles and it's on the Ford F-150. Perfect. I can't offer you 0%. That's not how we work. But if they can get you a better deal, great. Consider your options, and if they're the better options, go for it. We're not here to force you into anything. We want to make sure that you have the best experience that you possibly can. But what that does is securing your financing. We give you a pre-approval and say, hey, you're good to go spend X amount of money on a vehicle. And what that does is it just allows you to not think about that when you're actually looking at vehicles. It just kind of removes the worry of, you know what, do I need to go talk to the scary person at the finance manager? That was me. I was always the bad guy when I was in there, but I can promise you most of them are there to help you. Alrighty. That being said, dealer financing, kind of how that works. As a dealer, you typically have about 10 banks that you can go through-ish. Obviously that varies depending on how big the dealer is. And essentially what they do is they just reach out to their banks that they know can get you the best rate on that stuff, and ask them, hey, what does this look like? And this is kind of where I said, you know what, a lot of the times you may be able to get a better rate through them. But again, a lot of the times with those promotional financing options, just watch the fine print, because sometimes they may be like, you know what, we're going to give you 0% or we're going to give you $3,000 in a rebate. You pick. And from there, it's just some simple math, which is more worth it in the long run. over the course of a loan, paying 4% or 5% or 6%, whatever it is, how much is that going to cost me, and does it outweigh the $3,000 that they're going to give me up front? And so again, call us, use our payment calculator. It's all in there for you. And then obviously, this, like I said, this is the fun part. Find the vehicle, right? I thoroughly enjoy shopping for cars. It's something that I do more than I should, according to my wife, but you know, we all have our vices. But that being said, bring a friend, bring your spouse, bring whoever you trust to just kind of keep you honest, right? Make sure that you're not lying to yourself on, hey, I love this car because it's blue, even though the red one is obviously a better choice for you, right? Just make sure that you have someone that you can trust to bring along with you. And then it's okay to tell the salespeople, you know what, I'm not buying today. Now, that being said, it is their job to sell you a car. They're going to try to sell you a car, right? But it's okay to say no. Just do them the courtesy of, if you do go back and buy that specific car, buy it through them, because that's kind of how they get paid. That's how they make their living. So be loyal in that aspect when you are shopping through dealers. That being said, verifying your vehicle's value. This is always important. My favorite vehicle to use in this one is the brand new Corvette, just because, well, they're a little spendy right now. And the reason is it's supply and demand, right? We're not going to let you finance $100,000 if the vehicle's only worth $50,000, right? It just doesn't make sense. So let's say you are shopping for a new Corvette, it's $100,000, but we run it through all of our popular websites and figure out exactly, hey, you know what, this is what market says this vehicle is worth. If that says it's worth $80,000, we're not going to let you finance the full 100. You're probably going to have to put a down payment to get down to what that vehicle's value is worth. And I'm using the Corvette as an example, but the most kind of issues that we run into on this is actually older vehicles, just because there's less room for error. So for example, let's say you're looking at a 2009 something, and it's selling for $5,000 or $6,000, and it comes back and it says, you know what, it's only worth $3,000. Well, you're going to need to put a down payment to get it down to that number. So yeah, just kind of keep in mind before you buy the car, is it worth it? And again, that's why we're there. Give us a call. We would always be more than happy to help with that stuff. Next, obviously, once you figure out, hey, you know what, this car is priced kind of right where it should be, excuse me, research the actual vehicle history. Where did it live? Where did it grow up, right? I mean, right now, one of the common things is vehicles are coming up from down south, right? So for example, after Florida had its big floods and hurricane went through and stuff like that, a lot of vehicles got shipped up, right? So you want to make sure to check and make sure that those vehicles aren't damaged by floods, or where did they came from? Are they a local trade? Are they a lot of them that you'll see around here are from Michigan, just because, well, that's where a lot of the auctions are. So if a dealer buys a vehicle from an auction, odds are it's probably going to have a Michigan title, and that's fine. But any reputable dealer will be able to give you a vehicle history report on a vehicle. If not, you can always go online and pay for it yourself. Usually it's about $5, but that'll give you any recorded history of that vehicle. Now, what I mean by recorded is if Mr. Joe does his oil change in his garage and goes to the parts store and buys his oil and filter and stuff like that, that's not going to be recorded unless he has a receipt. But if you bring it to a dealer, an authorized dealer, odds are they will report that on the vehicle itself, and it will show up in that report. So again, vet your seller. If you are buying a private party, did they do the work themselves, or did they have a shop do it? If they had a shop do it, you can always call them and get records that way with the permission from the seller. But again, the big thing is just making sure that it's not a salvage vehicle or a damaged vehicle in any way, shape, or form. And that brings me to the next one. Salvage titles. Can you finance a salvage title vehicle? Yes, you can, as long as your insurance is able to cover it. We have had insurance companies say no sometimes, and we can't finance a vehicle that is insurable. But essentially what that means, a salvage title means that it's been damaged beyond repair, according to the insurance company. So that's flood, fire, theft, water damage, stuff like that. And typically if it does over 50% of the vehicle's value, the insurance company will total it. Now there are some companies out there that specialize in taking these damaged vehicles and fixing them up to meet the safety standards that is our state and federally mandated. That's great, and usually you can get a good discount on them. But if we go back a couple slides, verifying the vehicle value, a damaged vehicle is going to be worth a heck of a lot less than a vehicle that has not been damaged. So again, just make sure that if you are buying a salvage title, that it's being priced accordingly. And then last but not least, making the purchase, right? Excuse me. Plan your time accordingly. Whenever I worked in dealers, whether it be selling cars or working in a finance office, I always told people plan for 2 to 3 hours. And I said 2 to 3 hours because if I got done in 1, I was a hero, right? But if we ran into any snags, whether it be, you know what, you accidentally forgot that your credit's frozen, or hey, we just need some time to work things out, or whatever it may be, just make sure that you plan your time accordingly. Always plan for extra. Just because buying it from a dealership, they may not have the car cleaned yet because you didn't tell them you were coming, anything like that, right? It's just going to take extra time. So just plan accordingly. Also too, be clear with your expectation about price, right? The nice thing is a lot of dealers nowadays are using a no negotiation pricing, which can be a blessing and a curse sometimes. When I worked in a dealer, I worked for dealers that had both negotiation, non-negotiation. I much preferred the non-negotiation because it's not like you're going to go into Target, right, and haggle over some toilet paper. It's just, you don't do that. And it's the same thing. It just makes the process easier. But the nice thing is make sure that the parts you can haggle on, for example, like your trade value, stuff like that, make sure those are agreed upon before you actually go in. All right. That being said, after you make the purchase, there are some optional coverages that you can get through the dealership. And this is the most common question that I get as a loan officer, especially when people start talking about buying cars through dealerships. Things like extended warranties or extended service contracts. What is my opinion on them? I always start that with, I am a biased opinion, right? When I was working in the dealer, I never got to deal with the person that did an oil change every 6 months and then left. That was not who I had the pleasure of working with. I only got to see the bad stuff, right? So for me, I always buy them on my vehicles, but I know many people that don't buy them on their vehicles, and that's fine. Typically that'll cover things like touchscreen display goes out, braking components, stuff like that, that tend to be pretty expensive after that factory service coverage has expired, right? So usually they've gotten more expensive recently, anywhere from $3 to $5 grand to do that. Again, you have to make sure that the vehicle's value can maintain that as well. If your vehicle's worth 80 and you're buying it for 85 and then you want to add on another 5,000 for the additional coverages, you may need to put some money down to make sure that we can fit that within your financing plan. But again, typically we can with vehicles that hold their value well. That being said, we do have options for things like life and disability coverage on involuntary unemployment. If you lose your job, it's going to pay out up to the contract maximum, stuff like that. Again, this is all kind of, I'm going to breeze through this a little bit just because ask your loan officer about this stuff. They know a lot about it, and depending on the situation, it may or may not be the best option for you. But the big one that I always go over is the GAP coverage. Or guaranteed asset protection. This goes back to the vehicle value piece. So for example, let's use that Corvette. If it's worth $100,000 and you buy it for $120,000 and you run that Corvette into a wall, insurance is only going to pay you what the vehicle's value is, which is $100,000, which leaves you $20,000 that you still owe the bank. So how are you going to cover that? You're going to write a check for that, or GAP coverage is going to take care of that. It's going to pay whatever the insurance company won't up to a percentage of the vehicle's value. Usually that percentage is about 120%. But again, it's there for if you want. Usually it's about $15 a month, but the option is yours. Alrighty. And then again, obviously that's kind of our program as well. We will, if you get that coverage through us, we will typically pay your deductible as well as $1,000 towards your vehicle replacement as long as you finance with us again. But again, those are all kind of minor details. Just talk to your loan officer about those. Beyond that, if you have any other questions, obviously our call center is a fantastic resource for those. They can always get you in contact with a loan officer if you have further questions. But again, you can apply for loans on mayocreditunion.org. directly there. You can always call in or always feel free to stop by. The nice thing too is if you already have a vehicle financed somewhere else, let's say you finance through a dealer, excuse me, anything like that, we can always look at refinancing and getting you a better rate if you'd like. So again, same process, apply for that online, we'll go from there. So beyond that, that's about all I got for you. I know I kind of zipped through some stuff, so if you do have any questions, now is the time to ask those. And there's about a 10-second delay, so I'm gonna wait a minute before we do that, and we'll go from there. Yeah, question?
Talk about gap insurance a little more. Like, how often do you personally see that come in handy?
So gap coverage, I'd say about 45% of the time. Typically, it's one of those things where if you're putting a large down payment on a vehicle, I'm never going to recommend gap coverage because if something happens, you're going to get your vehicle's value back. And actually, there's a whiteboard here, so I'm going to pull over and give you a visual, if that's all right. Can you see that? Ish. I know my name's all over it, but throwing you a curveball here. Yeah, perfect. I can do that. Awesome. So essentially, with gap coverage, I always draw a big old graph. And essentially what this is this is going to be the total amount that you're going to finance. So let's just use the 100,000 number. And you're going to pay that down to a zero balance. And as you pay off a loan, it's a pretty linear line, right? But we all know that's not how vehicles depreciate. So essentially the vehicle depreciation is going to look like this. You're going to lose a lot in the beginning, and then it's gradually going to level off, right? And eventually you're going to have equity in it. Now my lines probably aren't the best drawing, right? But let's say your vehicle gets totaled here, right? An insurance company says, you know what? That vehicle is only worth $50K, right? But you still owe $60K. That's that gap I'm telling you about. So that's $10,000 that's going to be there. Now, if you're putting down a large amount of money, right? Your line may look like this. You don't need gap coverage because you're always going to have equity in the vehicle, right? And so it's always a situational based piece, right? And so I know, hopefully you can see that. If not, that's fine. Hopefully it at least helped out a little. But yeah, with gap coverage, it's kind of a person by person situation, but I'd say about 40-45% overall. So, any other questions?
How long is the pre-approval?
Pre-approvals are good for 90 days. We do pull credit every 45 on that. So for example, if you apply, we're going to pull your credit for that pre-approval. And then let's say 80 days down the road, you finally find a vehicle, we're going to have to pull your credit again, just because a lot can happen within that amount of time. So yes, 90 days is how long our pre-approvals are good for. And then if those expire, we can always just do the application over again and kind of reset that. Applications take 5-10 minutes and are no deal. So yeah. Any other questions?
What are some of the more common questions you're getting?
Yeah, what are the most common questions I get in terms of like market? The biggest thing is I always joke with people on trying to find the right car, right? Because that tends to be a piece that is pretty tricky right now. And that's with used cars specifically, just because vehicles, let's say you're buying a vehicle for a kid in high school or going off to college, whatever it is, the vehicles in that price range tend to go like that. They sell very, very quickly. So my recommendation for that is just, if you know that this is going to be a vehicle, you sometimes just got to jump on it. Whether it may or may not be the right decision, I guess you'll find out. But again, doing your research ahead of time and saying, you know what, this is the type of vehicle I'm looking for with X amount of miles, within X amount of years. That's kind of the big piece, but those are always tricky. Otherwise, the other common question is, how do I get the money? How do I pay the dealer? And there's two different routes that you can take with that. The easiest route is we print off a cashier's check, you stop by, and you drop it off, right? There is another option as well if you have a checking account with mail. What we'll do is you'll just write a personal check, and then we'll just deposit funds into your checking account to cover that. So if you're buying it out of state or something like that, that is an easier way to go about it without having to make multiple trips. But if it's local here in town, typically we like you have you come pick up a cashier's check. So yeah.
You also do things like boat loans?
Yeah, boats, RVs, ATVs. We do them all. So there are some different rates depending on, because obviously with like an RV, we can do those all the way up to 15 years. Can't do that with a car. That's a long time to pay on a car. And then obviously there's different rates for things like snowmobiles, boats, jet skis, stuff like that. So, but yes, we do those. Yeah, absolutely.
Some places right now are asking you to pay over sticker.
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Yeah, so this is relatively common when it's thankfully kind of going away a little bit. But the question was, the vehicle that I'm buying is over MSRP, or the manufacturer's suggested retail pricing. That'll happen. That is entirely supply and demand, right? The most common cars for that right now are going to be high-end sports cars and oddly vans. Because vans take a long time to get right now. So if you're ordering a Toyota Sienna or a Chrysler Pacifica, stuff like that, yeah, they may ask you to pay over sticker for that. Usually if you order a vehicle and are willing to wait, you will not have to, depending on the dealer that you're going through. But if they just have one sitting on the lot that maybe someone backed out of, yeah, it's within their right to say, you know what, based off the market and demand, we're going to mark this one $5,000 over sticker. That's up to you if you want to pay for it, to be completely honest. But it is not uncommon. It is not illegal for them to do. It's just supply and demand. So yeah, good question. Any others? Sweet. Well, thanks for coming. I know I kind of zipped through some stuff. So if you have any other questions, I'll just kind of go back. That is my contact info. I'll get this out of the way. That is my contact info, so if you have any questions, you can always reach out, give me a call, shoot me an email, whatever works. Otherwise, you can always just call into our main line. Yeah, happy